Okay, I have Roxanna Erickson back in the booth with me today for part two of our interview. In the last interview, we talked a lot about not just what her dad taught her, but also how he taught it to her. And in this interview, I want to talk a little bit more about her father's skill set and what she knew about him that led to that. So, without any preamble here, I think in the last interview, what I was suggesting was that I thought maybe a lot of these things that seemed unnatural about him might have come from the amount of time he'd spent in something like a trance or a meditative state. And I'm not really sure what your reply was to that, but I'd be really interested to hear you expand a little bit on your answer about that.
Okay, well, I can't remember exactly how I replied, but I hope that whatever I said before is cohesive to what I'm saying now.
Okay. And if not, I'll edit it out later, I promise. I got your back, Roxana.
So, all right, so you did inquire about um, his astuteness or his what seemed to be magical abilities to pick up on what's going on with another person or what exactly they might need right in this particular moment. And truthfully, in many ways, well, certainly he had an exceptional talent to attune to what someone else had experienced or what they need. He certainly had an exceptional talent there. But when in discussing it with him, which I had many occasions to do, he was very, very, very emphatic that his observational skills, that his assessment were not magical by any stretch of the imagination, that what he had was essentially a learned skill and intention to learn and to observe, and um, a lot of practice in doing so. He did not um, identify, well, you need 10,000 hours like some of the, current people who are talking about skill acquisition will talk about. But without question, he invested at least that amount of time, probably many times over the
Mm.
quantity of hours to learn these skills. He had a lifelong fascination with human behavior. He became interested as a child. And I would say probably, he was probably bored with the routines of farm life and repetitive labor that goes into his life, as a young boy. And so he was interested in animal behavior, he was interested in human behavior, and he would do little experiments around the farm on the subjects that were handy, including the chickens and the horses, whatever else was around. He would perform his own little experiments. And even for us, when we were children, we had a multitude of pets and animals, including chickens. And as a young child, he would go out and demonstrate to us and then get us each to demonstrate, here's how you put a chicken in a trance. And
I need to learn that skill.
yeah, well, all you do is you first you hold the chicken so it feels a sense of safety. Then
Sure.
you grab it by the feet and quickly flip it upside down. and let it relax. Okay.
Mm.
And quite frankly, if if you go into butchering, slaughtering of chickens, that's a technique that a lot of the butchers use,
Interesting.
um, is to get the chicken to relax, stretch their neck out, put on the chopping block, done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but he would show us that this is the chicken goes into an altered state of awareness. And
Mm.
then what comes after that, is something else. Um, but so he was really interested in animal behavior. He was interested in human behavior. So even as a young child, one of the familiar stories about him is that he'd get up early, get his chores done when on snowy days, and then he'd tromp the circuitous path to school and observe. Do the people that follow, do they take the same circuitous path, or do they tromp their own footsteps in the snow? And he was really curious, how far can he deviate from a straight line and still everyone follows him?
Yeah.
And he was just really curious about that. So those little experiments that he did over and over were part of his fascination with human behavior.
Mm.
What can I do that they're just going to blindly follow, or follow because it's easiest? And what is it going to take for them to really stimulate? What's it going to take to stimulate the unconscious decision making of, hey, this isn't the easiest way for me to get to school.
Mm.
So he started, what I'm saying is he started as a young kid
Yeah.
with this fascination.
Yeah.
And then as he grew over the years, it became interested in hypnosis and how does it work, what's going on, and concluded that we all have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind, and that they operate together but independently
Mm.
in different ways.
Yeah.
And that was part of his development. So then, as he was educated in this psychodynamic and psychoanalytic framework, that reinforced, and not in a way that he fully agreed with, but it reinforced that yes, we have an unconscious mind that influences human behavior. And so he invested himself in continuing to think about that and reaching his own conclusions, which turned out to be quite different from the conclusions that Freud had arrived at.
Mm.
But he studied it and continued to observe and continued to explore. And then as he learned hypnosis, he practiced on his siblings and
Mm.
practiced on family members throughout his career.
Yeah.
He come up with a new idea and he practiced, with opportunistically whoever was available.
Yeah. It's just amazing how he seemed to intuit not just, well, first of all, it's amazing that it seems like he's really all about being self-taught. Like everything I've read about him, like in what you just described, were his own little experiments that he would set up and learn and teach himself with. And so, after our last interview, I was thinking about that question I asked you, what you think may have led to some of these uncanny abilities he had. And then that reminded me of the first time I've ever even heard about your dad, I was reading a book called Laws of Human Nature, and the author was using him as an example about as a an analogy, the story of your father growing up, as an analogy for how one trains their ability to read minimal cues in other people, nonverbal communication. And so, I guess I'm checking. Does it sound right to you that when he was in a more paralyzed state at a younger age, that uh, he would watch his sisters and brothers interact, and that's where all of that kind of sensitivity to nonverbals became, his shtick, or do you know anything else about that?
Well,
How
truthfully,
could his attention be that high? I guess is what I'm asking.
he was a really smart guy. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
put it
Yeah.
really
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
bluntly.
Right.
When you give somebody that's got really superior intelligence, which he had, actually, both of my parents were exceedingly intelligent. And when you combine that exceptional intellect with a passionate desire to continue to learn. So he had the interest in continuing to learn and continuing to learn, to participate in learning. He would just add an extra dose of that energy and desire to continue learning.
Oh.
And so, really, this preceded and extended way beyond his illness. Yes, I will admit that when he got polio, he had nothing, very little else to stimulate him besides turning his attention inward.
Yeah.
But his fascination and dedication to learning preceded and exceeded his interval with polio.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think you just found a better way to ask the question I was trying. So you're saying that it wasn't so much as some kind of event in his or experience in his life that triggered him. He was born, this is more like a factory setting he was born with.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Okay.
This
Yeah.
was him, his gifts, his personality, his own effort.
Yeah, I will never get over being fascinated about that because he knows a lot of the same things maybe other psychologists but the way he was able to express it and apply it seems to defy explanation. And so that's why I'm here right now asking you these questions, because I really just want to get an
Well, if
idea
you were,
of how this all happened.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you were to ask him, he would say, no, it doesn't really defy explanation.
Yeah. Yeah.
As science continues to explore, as students continue to look at his work, as students study in their own way, we will learn more and more about minimal cues and other elements that we just don't fully understand right now.
I
And
see.
one of the and this actually goes beyond the his observational capacity, but one of the things that has been developed since he was alive was the ideas about activity dependent gene expression. So now we can see what looked like miraculous cures among his patients. And if we put them into the context of what is now known about stimulation of activity dependent genetic switches, oh, suddenly it makes a lot more sense.
Mm,
Now, he didn't fully understand that. Part of what made him unique and gave him his capacity to, get results was he was really courageous, willing to take risks, but curious beyond all explanation. And so he throw some idea at the individual, he'd say, well, I wonder, what this has to do with this and that, ask a question and about sexuality or history or underlying trauma or something like that. He would just throw out a comment so that he would have the opportunity to observe the minimal cues in the response of the individual, and then through that observation carry it the next step and the next step and the next step. Whereas, most of us, we ask a direct question and listen to the response that we get and are, kind of left in the dust.
Mm,
But he was so astute that he would take a risk, and maybe he was on target or maybe he was off target. And he was willing to do that. And if he was off target, okay, he hit it from another direction. But if he was on target, then he would take another risk and kind of leapfrog into a depth of understanding
I see.
that, logical, conscious conversation, you may never actually arrive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that makes so much sense. The sort of trial and error learning is generally how,
Right.
yeah.
And he was courageous about, trial and error, and honest with himself and with whoever he was working with. Oh, that he didn't express it in that way, but he
Mm,
would recognize, oh, I missed the mark with that comment. And let me go in another direction. So he was honest with what he was observing and noting in the response of the subject he was talking to, and then redirecting his own line of inquiry. But one of the things that was really significant about him is he was willing and able to take these risks and get the feedback, and knowing that no matter what came back to him, it was going to provide a layer of information that he could work with.
mm,
And so when he, would put somebody into a hypnotic state and get some unexpected response, he had 100% confidence that whatever information or whatever reaction, whatever response came up, it was going to be useful information. He was going to put that to use.
I see. Okay. Yeah, all I guess I think what you said there made something click in my own mind, which is just the idea about trial and error learning is generally how our mind learns experientially best. That's kind of how our minds evolved to learn how to do something. And so I guess what my next question is in the process of developing these um, body language reading skills, um, I, what I would imagine had to be the case is he had to be a very empathetic, compassionate person, because I'm learning that really what gives a person that kind of sensitivity to another person's nonverbals and the contextual cues of their communication is a heightened sense of empathy. So I was wondering if you thought this would be reflected in in who he was outside of work. Would that seem to does that fit? Did he seem like a very
Yes, I do think he developed exceptional skills at connecting with what was going on with the people around him. I think he worked at that. He wanted that. He actively revised, refined, reflected upon how did that go? What comes next? Where are we going with this? But to back it up to a
sure?
very kind of simplistic level, to a very, very basic level, as kid, was always available to us as kids. And he also knew and really taught that you learn from everybody. You don't have to look to the great teachers. You don't have to look to the scholars. You don't have to look to the well-educated people. You look around you, and every encounter you have is an opportunity to learn. And he was really true to that concept when he would teach people in his office, which was a classroom throughout my entire life. He saw patients there, but he also would meet colleagues there. And when he was teaching, not 100% of the time, but a good percentage of the time, the door would be open, those kids were allowed to come in. And if we had something we wanted to say, we had the right to pipe up and say, well, what about this? And I also noticed at a very young age, he would when his students like Jay Haley or other notables would come to the house, he didn't come out and meet them at the front door. He would let them come in and sit down on the sofa, and the kids come in. Hi, how you doing? Whatever. And he would observe how those
Oh,
students
yeah.
interacted with us kids.
Mm,
And it was a dual lesson. He was learning about where his colleague was in terms of openness to learn from the people around them. But he was also opening the door for us kids to feel the confidence of, well, actually, we know a thing or two, or we think we know a thing or two. So we've got some degree of awareness of of value in what it is that we have to say. But one of the things that so we were allowed to come into his office if his office door was open, and it would be open really early in the morning and late in the evening when he was writing and stuff like that. That's where he would hang out. We would go in, and if we had a question, we kind of had a routine of how we would wait for him to have a break in his thinking, and turn his attention to us. He would give us the fullest attention. And I was probably more vulnerable than some of my other siblings to people who gave mixed messages or messages that I couldn't interpret, I couldn't understand. And I remember going to him and saying, my friend Susie always says she wants to get together, but every time I speak to her, it's like, well, today's not a good day, and let's do it later, and et cetera, et cetera. And yet when I say, well, do you want to get together? Do you want to go to the park together? Do you want to play together or not? that Susie is always telling me, yes, I want to do this, and reassuring that she wants to. And I remember my dad just staring me straight in the face and saying, stop listening to the words,
Mm,
look at the action.
mm,
That'll tell you everything you need to know.
yeah, yeah,
And so that very, very fundamental, don't get mixed up by the words. When it reaches a state where you're getting mixed messages or confused messages or whatever, stop listening to the dialogue and turn your attention to the nonverbal communication.
yeah.
And that's a lesson that I've taken with me, my whole life. I
Mm.
still resort to it when I start, what's going on here? I thought I understood what's happening, and then just shutting down the words and looking at the actions.
Oh, yeah, that really is fascinating. I wish I had not learned that lesson myself so late in life. Really just paying more attention to the nonverbal cues and the actions. Those are the ones that don't lie. You know,
Right.
that's the authenticity of a person coming out. And
Mhm.
I think sometimes it just requires some tough skin to realize that, because there's a lot of rejection and hard truths about other people. But I think really, I guess a lot of the questions I have, I'm realizing are kind of based on what you observed about his personality, the underlying personality characteristics he had that led to a lot of these. So when he was not working, I mean, I don't know, maybe he just never stopped being in work mode mentally, but like when he wasn't, in the office or dedicating focused time to his work, his profession, um, is there any way that you would describe him, or was it all just the same kind of personality there?
Well, yeah, he was a person who was engaged in life all of the time. He never, we didn't own a TV. We were one of two households in my entire elementary school that did not own a TV. And um, the so he would relax. We all learned to relax, but it wasn't by parking ourselves in front of the TV. We and we did he liked it when he wanted to relax, and physically he was, he was frail. Even when I was a kid, he was relatively frail. He was 50 years old when I was born, and I have a younger sister. We had 8 kids in the family, so we had
Yeah,
a busy, active family life. Um, and we always had a lot of activities and things going on and people around and things to keep us engaged in day-to-day life. But he would work in rest intervals during the day. As I said, he liked to get up early. And I also like to get up early. So that would be a time where it was just he and I, just fixing breakfast or, whatever, sitting around any thoughts about what's going on. Um, the and then he would, after the routines, just he relaxed by going in his office and writing, and that was relaxing to him. But then he'd
mm,
take a rest period in the middle of the afternoon where he would lie down for an hour or so. And when he would go lie down on top of the bed, the kids were welcome to come in and lie down with them, and we would read comic books, or we called them funnies, and we would share our whatever made us laugh, we would share it with each other. And so this was a very relaxing, comfortable stimulus of a different sort.
Mm,
And then we would often take a Sunday drive and go around town and look at, neighborhoods that we hadn't been in before, find an interesting house that had interesting architecture, or, they're in Arizona. It's desert, and the roads after rainstorms, they get what we refer to as a washboard feel to them occasionally. So we would take a drive down the washboard road and feel the car jiggle up and down, and
uh,
um, just kind of go exploring or go out to one of the nearby. Phoenix is in the Valley of the Sun, so it's surrounded by mountains. And so we'd go out to one of the mountain ranges. The Estrella Mountains had petroglyphs. And so we'd go out there and climb around and see if we could find any petroglyphs there. Um, and he'd just kind of hang around while we went exploring. But it was always participatory. Everything that we're doing, even for relaxation, is a participatory engagement, fascination, curiosity, extension of our understanding of society and culture and anthropology and everything else.
mm,
And he was very, very encouraging that we go and do things, but he also was very encouraging that we find our own way in so doing. Like when the state fair came to Phoenix, and people are talking about, well, fair is coming next month. Then he didn't give us $20 and say go to the fair, and take rides. He would look really interested and say, how are you going to earn the money to pay for the
yeah.
so we would do that, and then we'd walk that. I mean, we took full responsibilities, even as very young kids,
Mm,
to earning our way and going in, and then judiciously spending the paltry resources that took us there. And with as many siblings as we had, we'd pal with each other, we'd learn from each other, we'd check in from each other. And but it was a self-responsibility of participatory engagement in opportunities that are surrounding us all the time.
mm,
And one of the other things that that was a very constant for relaxation was reading. We all read for relaxation and entertainment. We had tons of books in the house.
mm. What do you remember any particular author? Did you have a favorite author or uh,
It was
any?
classics. It was classics. The so we had literally thousands of books, most of them classics. And he liked science fiction, so he would read that occasionally, but that was a short bookshelf. Most of the books around the house were uh, classics.
Did
or
you?
or comic books.
Oh, okay. What was it? Were they your comic books? Or he read comic
I
books?
know we all had comic books. We had a big box of comic books that we kept behind a chair in the living room. And we would,
Huey, was it Huey, Louie, Ducky or something?
yeah, Huey, Louie, and
Yeah,
Dewey,
yep, yep.
Little Lulu, Nancy and Sluggo, Superman. We had a big box, Little Lotta, we had a big box of comic books. And for Christmas, sometimes I would get a subscription to Archie, and Christy would get a subscription to Little Lulu. You
Mm.
know, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
No,
then we'd
that's
all read all the comic books when we were laying down. And if we laughed, that was kind of cute. If we laughed at something, then the other person would turn up, and look interested, and we'd share.
yeah,
This is what I found funny.
yeah.
They love, mom and dad both love peanuts. That was probably their favorite Charles Schulz peanut.
Oh man, this is all news to me. I feel like I'm learning a lot of what your guys' normal family life was like, and that's, interesting enough as it is. Um, but what caught my attention before was you were saying he would take, say, an hour or so to lay on the bed and take a relax period here, right?
Mhm.
And so I was wondering if you thought, was that a time he would take, you think, to spend in trance, or was he napping, or um and I think where I'm really trying to take this question here is, um I'm trying to see the overlap between trance and even mindfulness meditation,
Okay, so
and then
let
ask you
me
about your own practice. Yeah.
okay. So he, yeah, I think the definition of trance he offered, his very, very simplistic explanation of trance is a dissociation of the conscious mind from the unconscious mind.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
to better understand what is meant by that, it's turning up the attention inward, do kind of an inner exploration, what's in there, what's going on, what comes up
uh
all on its own,
yeah,
the
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of automaticity.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so yes, when he lay down, you know, I might be reading a comic book, or a group of us might be reading comic books, and he may or may not be reading, comic books with us. But when we laughed, we generally shared it with one another. Now, he may be lying there in trance doing this inner exploration, and he may or may not be re-alerted when we laughed about something to be participatory, and we were always accepting, respectful. Oh, dad didn't lean over to see what I was laughing at. Okay, I'll just share it,
Yeah,
just
let's
continuing
laugh.
on.
Yep, yep.
Con- Continuing on, we usually, as kids, usually didn't feel the need to nap in the afternoon. So if we were lying down, we were likely reading comics. If he was lying down, he might be, quote, napping. But in truth, that nap would be, I mean, he wasn't asleep. I'm going to tell you that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He was not asleep.
Yep, yep.
He was with his attention turned inward, relaxing in his own personal way, which I would say is a trance state, an inner
Yeah.
exploratory.
So you said you'd do that for, say, an hour a day?
Excuse me.
You said he would do that for an hour a day, you said?
Usually an hour in the middle of the day.
Okay.
That was the typical pattern in the
Mm.
middle of the day. Yeah.
Do you have some kind of meditation practice, person?
No,
No. Okay.
no, I never. So I was educated about hypnosis, and since I was a young child, and for me, that I didn't even study meditation or mindfulness until more recently as an adult. And to be quite truthful, after I got my license as a professional counselor, I shared an office and a workplace with a colleague who was as advanced in mindfulness as I was in hypnosis. And I just, said, gosh, we need to share our skills.
Yeah.
You can teach me about mindfulness and I'll teach you about hypnosis, and then we'll each come away with a better understanding. So the understanding that I reached as a result of that collaboration with, her name is Kay Colbert, just to be complete, in my collaboration with Kay and our sharing of information, our sharing of experience, I came to learn from her that mindfulness is turning the attention into the moment of now, is reducing one's sense of awareness into the moment of being present, fully present in the moment of now, and fully experiencing that way of living and way of focusing one's attention.
I see. Okay. Yeah. No,
Okay.
yeah, no, I figured it would be a really good background skill to learn, like you said, to combine your practices there. And that's
Mhm.
really fascinating to me because, in I didn't even intend on doing this, but I got into mindfulness meditation, I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago, and I just was doing it because I knew it was good for me, and I didn't realize how much I could learn about myself by doing it. And then so now that I start reading um, all this literature about hypnotherapy and hypnosis and the mechanics that go into that, unconscious searches, amnesias, dissociations, all these different things going on. And so in my meditation practice, I would be noticing these basically the mechanics in my mind, how they were working, and then I'd go and I'd read about these, and I would see them describing it very eloquently exactly what was going on. So it felt like I was almost learning. um it felt like just a really great way to learn about hypnosis in the unconscious mind, experientially, just meditating, and so I guess um I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on the difference between mindfulness in trance or
Right,
yeah,
right. Well, as I said, I learned from Kay that mindfulness is being fully present, physically, mentally, etc., in the moment of being.
sure.
In contrast,
Yeah.
hypnosis is likewise turning your attention inward with being fully present, but it's more open. The door is wide open in terms of going into your thoughts, feelings, desires, what Kay calls stories, what
Mm,
threads going
I see.
past, present, future. It's a full engagement, but it's a much broader expansion of where one is. Instead of being present in the moment, you're kind of present where wherever,
Present with the
whatever
past, present
comes.
with the future, you mean? Is
Yeah,
that yeah,
present. And so if I'm sitting down, if Kay is sitting down to meditate, she is turning her attention into the feelings and the experience of being here now. If I'm sitting down right next to her,
mm,
my mind may be wandering into the real or the imaginary, and may be wandering into thoughts of the past or anticipation of the future, or fantasies of the future, or
I
experience of someone
see. I
else.
see.
It's just a much more open territory
Mm,
of what is available and part of it. And so for me, when I actually signed up for a class with John Kabat-Zinn in mindfulness practice, because I thought, let me get a good feel for what I'm missing out on that's so
sure.
popular right now.
Yeah.
And I discovered actually it wasn't a good fit. I'm much more comfortable, and it's much better fit for me to just stay in the hypnosis territory, where I can be, me in the way that I want to be.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Instead of the intense discipline, yeah, I hear you. I think, if I understand you correctly, trance is a much more pleasant experience because it isn't so directed and it isn't so
Well, it right. Well, I think if you're meditating properly, it is fulfilling and self-directed. But for me, I'd already learned the pathway to creativity through hypnotic trance, and I don't want to give that up.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
like it. That's what's satisfying and gratifying to
yeah,
me, and I
yeah,
don't feel, compelled to set it aside and learn a skill that I don't anticipate would serve me better than the skill set that I enjoy so much.
yeah. You made a comment there on the creativity that it taught you, and and that reminded me of the first time I met you was in one of the Dan Short's GCM meetings, and I just I don't even necessarily remember what comments you made, but I just remember them being really witty, very funny, and I was like, I was like, I was like, I wonder if I should ask her how to be funny, you know? And yeah, so obviously, like, yeah, I think in a good relationship with your unconscious mind and trance does kind of show you a lot about creative thought, and so I thought that was a really good point you just made.
Well, creativity and curiosity are probably the driving um, energy within me. I have a curious mind. I love creativity,
Mm,
and that kind of keeps propelling me into engagement in life. But for just one little example about that, I'm getting older, and I want to keep my physical, stamina and ability. So I recently bought a bicycle, and I've been going out bicycle riding every morning. And I don't take the same route. I take a different route force myself the discipline to take a bike ride for 3 miles every day. I have an odometer, and that's discipline that's
mm,
getting me to do that. But the 3 miles is different every single morning.
yeah, yeah, and I think somebody who didn't understand, you know, really the mechanics of creativity and curiosity doesn't understand how significant that really, how significant of a difference it makes to do a different route. It seems like a simple thing to suggest to somebody, but the subjective experience you get, um, if you were to just outline that in writing, probably couldn't even be expressed in a book. So I mean, I think a lot of what you say is really fascinating to me, and, it almost has a flavor of how your dad expressed himself, because like just hearing you talk and describe your own subjective experiences, I'm noticing all these different points, all these I'm noticing all these different theories and concepts I've learned from studying, uh, Dan and Jeff Friesig and your dad. And so I wish we had time to like go over all those, but like, we're doing the best we can here. And so I also want to really thank you for doing this with me again. It means a lot. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
It's interesting to me to have the opportunity to get together and just express these things and see what you're interested in
Mm,
and what you're anticipating that maybe a larger viewing audience might be interested in. Um, it's a two-way street. I learned from it too, and it helps me kind of put concepts together. So feel free to come back and talk, chat, either in a formal way or in an informal way, whenever you decide to.
you're gonna become my favorite guest real fast. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, okay.
All right,
So,
bye bye now.
okay, bye-bye.